Marty, and welcome to Cooking at the Kraus house. Today we have a super special guest. This is my sister Vilaine, and she's my younger sister, and I'm super proud of her. She has her PhD, not in cooking, in English, which isn't that important, but it was still a lot of work, and I'm so proud of her. And she is an exceptional baker, and she knows so many things, so gifted, so talented. And,
Nearly twins.
Nearly twins, only I'm older and shorter. But today we're making something super great, which is?
We are making blueberry streusel topped muffins and blueberry cobbler. And the feature really is the streusel topping today, which you can use on anything.
You are gonna love this, and you can use it on all kinds of things. And I can't wait for you to try it. Vilaine, tell us what's in these delicious muffins.
There's 3/4 cup of sugar, 6 tablespoons of butter, 2 large eggs, a teaspoon of vanilla, 2/3 cup of sour cream. This sour cream is what makes them really moist and delicious. A 1/2 teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of baking powder, 1 1/4 cups of flour, and a cup of fresh blueberries. You can use frozen, but that's not as good.
And can you use margarine?
No,
Never.
I don't think margarine is a good substitute in this
For
case.
anything.
I mean, if you want to be really health conscious, you could substitute applesauce. It changes the texture and the flavor a little bit, but it's a good substitute if you want something low fat, but I wouldn't recommend it.
If you want to be health conscious, make something else.
Yeah, probably a good idea. So you're going to want to take your sugar and butter and cream this together for about 4 to 5 minutes. That seems like a long time, but you want to make sure that you don't skimp on that. You want to cream these together in a mixer. I use the flat paddle attachment and cream this together for 4 to 5 minutes. As this has been creaming, I scrape down the sides to make sure that there's no chunks of butter left clinging to the sides. You want to make sure that it's all incorporated. And then I'm going to add 1 egg at a time. Remember, we have large eggs. And anytime you're baking, you want to make sure that you use room temperature eggs. So these have been sitting out, they're room temperature. So I'm going to incorporate those 1 at a time. This is another time that you're going to want to scrape down the sides of the bowl too, because you don't want any chunks. You want this to be really well incorporated.
Vilaine, didn't you also say that this makes a really great cake, base for a cake?
This is a really great, just, what's the word I'm looking for? Basic batter for cake. You can make it into a coffee cake. You can put any kind of fruit in it besides blueberries. You don't have to put any fruit in it. You can put chocolate chips in it. You can put nuts in it, anything you want. So it's just a really good basic batter for just about anything. If you were using this for a cake that you were gonna ice, this will just make 1 8-inch round cake. And so if you were gonna do layers, you'd wanna, double this recipe or triple or however many layers you'd want. I'm gonna add the vanilla. I'm going to turn this off to add the sour cream because it gets a little bit messy. Don't want that to fly all over. All right, one of the things I wanted to show you at this stage, if that's all right, is you might get worried because the batter starts to look like it is separating a little bit. And that's perfectly fine. It's just the sour cream that kind of makes it look like it's looking a little bit curdly. That's perfectly fine. Once you add the flour and the dry ingredients, then it all comes together and it's not a problem. Before you add the flour, you're gonna want to put the salt and the baking powder in with the flour and mix that around. And then you'll just add the flour while the batter is mixing on low. Once you have the flour in there and it starts to get incorporated, you want to turn it up and incorporate all the ingredients. I also saved out about maybe a teaspoon of the flour, and this is a trick that you won't get in our cookbook, which the recipe is in. But I'm going to take a little scoop of the flour and I'm going to mix it in with the blueberries, and so that they're just, it's not a lot of flour. I'm just making sure that the blueberries are coated a little bit, and this will keep the blueberries from sinking to the bottom of your cake and having them all on the bottom of your cake. You want them mixed all in, you know, regularly, evenly in with your cake, or if you're making muffins, which was what we're making today, we want the blueberries to be all over in the muffins, not just at the bottom. So then I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to mix the blueberries in by hand. You don't want to do those with the paddle mixer, because then you'll just have blueberries squished all in your batter, and you don't want that.
Right, and you don't get the contrast of the bright white muffin mix and the blueberries. It's just all sort of a purple
Blue,
mess.
yeah, it's not good. This is also usually when I make sure that I get all of the flour that maybe has gotten up on the side of the bowl. But then I just stir these blueberries in, and with a little bit of flour that was on the blueberries, and I just kind of fold those in very gently, and that is our batter, and it looks really great.
When you use liners, you don't have to use liners, but I love these. They're made out of parchment, and so they never stick to the muffin. They make it super easy to come off, and they're just really nice. And I also like the brown of them. I think I like the natural look.
Filling the muffin cups about, I would say, 3/4 of the way to the top, a little bit more than half full. And I just like to use a spoon and my finger. You can use a cup, or you can use an ice cream scoop if you wanted them all to be exactly the same amount. I think this is just easiest. It also allows me to manually sort of manipulate the blueberries, so there's the same amount of blueberries in each muffin. Like, you don't want to get down to the bottom and have no blueberries left. So this way I can sort of look and decide, make sure that everyone has some blueberries.
And because of COVID-19, she's not licking her finger in between.
Oh my gosh, but this is the best batter to eat raw, which I know everyone says that you shouldn't, raw eggs, blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah, it is delicious.
But this is the most delicious raw batter ever. So
hurry and lick the bowl before your kids get in there.
That's right. Now for our secret weapon, that delicious streusel topping. It has 1/4 of a cup of white sugar, 1/3 of a cup of packed brown sugar, and 1 1/3 cups of flour. This is something that you don't really want to mess with. Like, if you don't have enough white sugar, just add more brown sugar, vice versa. You want to follow this recipe exactly. And it seems like a lot of flour compared to the sugar that's in it, but it's really sweet and delicious, and it turns out perfect every time. So I have mixed this until you can't even tell that there's any other kind of sugar or anything. It just looks like it just looks like flour. And that's what you want. You don't want any lumps of anything. You just want to incorporate those two different kinds of sugar into the flour. And then I usually make just a little well in the middle, and I dump all of the melted butter right in the middle. And so this part is the only, did you want to put that over there? This is the only part that is kind of tricky, and it's not even tricky. You want to mix this with a fork. You can see that I'm just using a fork, and I just kind of fold this to incorporate the butter. You don't want to mix this so much that it turns into something that's, congealed all together. You don't want to undermix it so you still have, like this, there's still flour just hanging out there. You want to mix it enough until it turns into just crumbs. If you mix it past that, then it'll all sort of be one big crumb, and you don't want that.
It's hard to divide.
Right, and so When it all kind of gets mixed together, I just start scooping it with a fork this way so that it kind of separates, but also incorporates at the same time, so that what I have left is just crumbs. And you do kind of want to scoop up from the bottom every now and then to get that flour that's stuck on the bottom. But it's really important not to overmix this so that you have...
But you also don't want flour humps either.
No. I want to make sure that there's a
blob.
Yeah, a little bit of flour if I bring that up, and I want to not have that. But this is about right. Like it's just crumbly. There's not a lot of flour anymore. It's okay if there's a little bit. Like when I bring this up, there's going to be a little tiny bit of flour. This is just right. It's just crumbs, and that's what I want. And this is what you can put on any baked item that you want. And that's why we don't fill the muffin cups as full as you would normally maybe fill up muffin cups to bake muffins, is because you want to have a lot of streusel topping. And I usually do put a tablespoon, a big tablespoon on top. And I pat it down a little bit to make sure that it kind of adheres to the batter that's already in there. And I just scoop it in like that.
The batter and streusel mix is almost proportionate.
Right, there's almost as much. And that's delicious. If you would like a little less, I don't know why you would. But if you want a little less streusel, then just fill up the
muffins.
Right, fill up the muffin cups a little more full. So those are the muffins, and you can see that they're really full of that streusel topping, and they're ready to go into the oven for about, I'd say 15 to 20 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes, something around there, depending on how hot your oven is. And the way you can tell that they're done is you're gonna very carefully press the top. If it goes down like that, that went down and it's not coming up. But if they're done, you can just barely press the top of that and they'll just spring back up, and that's how you can tell that they're done. So.
Another great thing that you can use this streusel for is if you have unexpected guests and you need a quick dessert. This is easy to mix up. You can use any fruit. You can use frozen or fruit that you have in your refrigerator, or canned fruit, or just about anything, and whip up a super fast dessert, as long as you have vanilla ice cream in your freezer.
Oh yeah, there's nothing better than hot cobbler, yeah, that's it. And vanilla ice cream, that's delicious. Delicious combination. We're using blueberries today, but as Marty said, you can use a combination of berries. I love blueberries. We lived in Maryland for about 6 years, and they have a lot of you-pick blueberry farms, and they were delicious. And so we had a lot of blueberry cobbler, and it is really delicious. So we just have 2 cups of blueberries here. We're just making a really small, maybe for 2 or 3, or if you're my husband, 1, a single serving.
He's a big guy.
Yeah. And of course, the rest of our streusel topping, we have some lemon juice and some sugar and some flour. And these aren't measured, and I'll show you where it just kind of is what you need. Sometimes if you're using frozen fruit or canned fruit, it'll be more wet because it has already some moisture in it. We're using fresh fruit, and so it's dry, so we might need a little bit more moisture and a little less flour. Also, you'll want to taste your fruit to see how much sugar it needs. Sometimes the blueberries are sweeter than others. Usually later in the season, the blueberries are much sweeter, and earlier in the season, they're not as sweet. So it just depends. And I've tasted these, and they're pretty sweet, so we won't probably be adding very much sugar. So we're going to start with spraying our pan with some nonstick spray. This is vegetable spray, and I always spray mine over the sink because it has a tendency to just like get everywhere. So that keeps it under control a little bit, so you don't have to wipe off all of your counter space. And then I'm going to take my blueberries. If you are using a 13 by 9 pan, I would say you'd need at least 4 to 5 cups of blueberries. If your fruit is bigger, like peaches are bigger in size, you might not need as much as 5 cups. But you kind of just have to go with till your pan is full, and then that's how much you need. And we're going to add to this a little bit of lemon juice. Lemon juice, you don't want it to taste like lemon blueberry crumble. You want it to taste just like yummy blueberry. But lemon juice has the tendency to bring out the flavor of foods, and so I'm just going to add a little bit of lemon juice. I'd say maybe a teaspoon. Also, we're using fresh blueberries that are dry, and this adds a little bit of moisture. They're gonna lose a lot of their moisture, and all the juiciness is gonna come out in the pan when they bake, but it's nice to have just a little bit of moisture. I'm gonna add maybe a tablespoon or a tablespoon and a half of sugar, and then about the same of flour. If I was using canned fruit or frozen fruit, I would maybe use a little bit more flour. You can also use cornstarch if you have a gluten issue. You can use cornstarch. Of course, there's flour in the streusel, so that might not work, but cornstarch works really well too. I'm just gonna stir this up so that it's incorporated in the blueberries. And it doesn't have to be anything really great or fancy. I don't worry about how well it's incorporated. And then I dump it into the pan. And I want to make sure I get every last blueberry. And then I just sort of even that out. You can see there's chunks of flour here and there. It doesn't really matter if it's mixed up well. This is all just going to kind of bubble and boil together, so it doesn't make any difference. And then
another reason you want to put sugar in it is because it makes the blueberries pop. And if you don't add at least a little bit of sugar, even if they're sweet, your blueberries can stay whole and dry.
Yeah, it makes the juice come out. And so that's really what you want. And then I'm gonna take my streusel topping again, and I'm just gonna kind of crumble this on top. This has a lot of blueberries in it for me. Really, I like about half and half of streusel topping to, or 1-to-1 ratio of streusel topping and blueberries. This is gonna have a little bit less streusel topping. This is also a really good way to use up your extra streusel topping. Sometimes when I make muffins or I make the coffee cake, I have a little bit of streusel left. And if I have some berries in the freezer or somewhere, I can even make in a little custard cup 1 serving, and it's really quick to use up your streusel crumble, or you can just eat it because this is also really delicious raw, and it's really good. So anyway, I've just covered my blueberries. I'm gonna put this also in a 350-degree oven for about, I'd say 25 to 30 minutes. You want to be able to see around the edges where you can see the fruit that it's bubbly. And once you see that it's bubbly around the edge and that the streusel topping has gotten a little bit brown, then you know that it's done. So we'll stick this in the oven for about 20, 25 minutes.
Now, when you do make it in a 9x13, it almost takes 2 recipes of streusel because you want it to...
That is the star. The streusel topping is the star, unless you really like fruit, which fruit is okay.
Well,
but the streusel
dessert
topping really helps the fruit go down, is what
Right.
it is, really. So.
The blueberries are just to enhance the streusel topping.
And kind of make a syrup for the ice cream.
Exactly.
Right, and
Exactly.
that's really what it's for. So we're gonna pop this in the oven and it'll be ready in about half an hour, 20, 25 minutes.
We finished cooking the muffins, and also our cobbler is all finished. And Elaine, show us what they look like.
Oh, these are so delicious. And you can see that they could have even used more streusel topping. So don't be afraid to put a lot on there, because when the muffins bake, they kind of puff up and there's still some spaces in between, but they're really delicious. They are perfectly done, and they practically slip right out of these
I know.
muffin cups. And you'll be able to see that the blueberries are pretty evenly dispersed, and they're really, really delicious. You'll love those. Very crumbly, which is great. And the blueberry cobbler is perfectly done. I wanted to say it's always a good idea if you're making cobbler to bake it on a baking sheet, because it has a tendency, I don't know why I make anything apple, it always seems to overflow.
Yeah.
But this was really good, it didn't, but just to save you cleaning in your oven, you'll probably want to put it on a baking sheet when you put it in the oven. And it also was all bubbly and perfectly done, and we're just going to scoop some of this out. And oh my gosh, it's still steamy. And you can see it's just juicy and delicious.
Sugar.
That's right. And all ready for company or just, you know, a midnight snack for yourself. It's really, really delicious and ready to go. And that is streusel topping and blueberry crumb cake.
Okay, that's it. Thanks everyone for watching. This streusel recipe is going to become one of your favorites too. It's so versatile and you can use it just for anything. So please be sure and like,
Share,
push the notification bell thing,
subscribe.
any of that. And leave a comment if you'd like to. Remember, make it nice. I have grandkids. And I just want to thank Vilaine so much for being on my show today. She is an awesome baker, and I learned so much from her, and I'm just so happy to have her here today.
Happy to be here.
Thanks so much, Vilaine.
You're welcome.